Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Prabhajantamana Petyam Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putre Titam Maitaya Taravovistam Sarvabhutam Munimanatoshmi. First of all, offering millions and millions of Dhanavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my beloved Gurudev, Nityalila Pravishta Om, Astol Tarasara Shishimad Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I'm offering the same again, millions and millions of times, unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nityalila Pravishta Om, Astol Tarasara Shimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Namo Mahavadhanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvisay Namaha. Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidananda Namane Gaura Shakti Sharupaya Rupanuka Varayate. So I'm offering my Dandavat pranams to all our Nuka Guru Varga and all the Vaishnav and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord who will listen in on this stream today. So we're coming back to our Falshruti. We're on the second set. Jaredvaita Jnana Haya Chita Upadaya Krishna Bhakti Chitatina Upaya. Today we don't have our Gurukul, and I've come back, as you can see, into Goldram Dweep. So I left Bhubaneswar early this morning. So we're here. Such knowledge, which is solely related to the duality of this dull material world, is fit to be rejected, whereas transcendental knowledge of the divine duality within the spiritual world, Chid Jagat, should be accepted forever within one's heart, both as the upaya, means of attainment, and the upaye, a goal worthy of attainment. So we have to replace our immersion in the material world with something else. We can't just stop it. We have to take the alternative, the antidote, which is immersion in the spiritual topics. That's what he's saying. Not this duality of this dull material world, but instead, whereas transcendental knowledge of a divine duality within the spiritual world should be accepted forever within one's heart. That means all the things, everything to do with this material world, for our bhajan, for our internal progress, should be rejected because it has no efficacy, we said, it has no value. There's no value in anything in this material world. We're doing service in this material world. Everything we do is seva. All of our involvement in this material sphere is seva. Therefore, it's all being transformed. Everything is transformed. We're doing the same activities, perhaps, but it's all in a mood of to please Krishna, not to please my own senses as the enjoyer. When I'm acting as the Vishaya, the enjoyer, the Bhakta, then this means that Maya Devi has captured me. So these are the topics that we're discussing. Jiva Kabu Jadanai, Hari Kabu Nai, Hari Saha Jiva Chintya Beta Beta Mai. The Jiva
is not a product of dull matter, nor is he Keval Advaita, absolutely one in all ways with Sri Hari. The Jiva is inconceivably different and non-different from Hari.
This is what we're going to discuss today. This is a fascinating topic because we have a particle of that Chit sun, that purity, that Swarup within us. And so we're the same and yet we're different. What is the difference is the enormity of Krishna's, yes, Krishna's completeness, whereas we are tiny. We are this Anuchit. Krishna is Vibhuchit. We're going to discuss this today. Deha kabo jivanai, dara bhogyanai, dasya bhoga jiva Krishna prabhu bhakta hai.
The material body should never be considered to be the jiva, and this earth is not for the jiva to exploit and enjoy. The jiva's swarup is Krishna Das, and thus he is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. Whereas Shri Krishna's swarup is Prabhu, master and bhokta, enjoyer.
So this takes time to actually transform the consciousness. We've been, like we were saying yesterday, we were talking about this nishag. We've been under the impression, this acquired nature, that I am this material body and everything pertaining to this material body is very important. So we've had that experience, but now we're transitioning round. That means to hear a lot about Krishna, to hear a lot about his energies, to hear a lot of the tattva, which is what the 15th chapter is actually giving us, and to hear also ultimately the lila, because the lila is what's going to attract the heart. The tattva will give the intelligence a clear platform, but then the lila is what is going to transform the heart. So this is what we must consider. Jaiva-Dharma nahiyache deha dharma kata nahiyache jiva gyani maya vada prata.
This book, entitled Jaiva-Dharma, neither discusses matters related to the dead material body, nor does it propound the Mayavada doctrine of the jiva's oneness with Brahm.
Thank goodness.
Hmm.
This is not supporting the traditional material view of life. Nothing in this book is. It's all guiding us towards transcendence, exactly the same way as Srimad Bhagavatam is. It's the condensed form of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the same principles in Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam has much more leelas and personalities are there involved. The pastimes, etc., are woven in. The color to attract the conditioned soul. Jaiva-Dharma also has beautiful pastime woven in, the backdrop to it, with Brajanath, with Vijay Kumar later on, with their families and what they're doing and so on. So this balancing, this harmonizing with the material sphere, we also must take that into our lives because we've got material bodies. So what are we going to do with our lives? It's not that we're going to go and sit on top of a mountain and just meditate. We have to be involved in Guru Seva, Krishna Seva, all types of sevas in this world. But the principal seva is our bhajan. If our bhajan is not moving, progressing nicely, then what is the value of any other type of seva? Because there's a disconnect. If the bhajan is not going, if the bhajan is not flourishing, that's always our prayer. Jiva nitya dharma bhakti tahe jadanai, Shura jiva prema seva phale payanai tai.
The jiva's nitya dharma is bhakti, devoid of material motivation. The jiva, purified by seva, attains the fruit of that seva in the form of prem.
Yes, prem is our objective. Prem for the divine pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Service to that prem. That is our objective. Actually, ultimately, for the sadhaks in this line from Rupa Goswami, we are cultivating service to Sri Radhika. Sri Radhika is that personality who is immersed in seva to Krishna exclusively. Nothing else ever crosses her mind. She will not eat, she will not sleep, she will not do anything unless it's service to Krishna, unless it's in his interest. That's what's in her mind totally. So we, as the sadhaks in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, are totally embracing this conception because Mahaprabhu has come to give this Manjari Bhav. He hasn't come to give Sakhi Bhav. We've spoken about this before. He's only come to give Manjari Bhav. And that Manjari Bhav is service to Sri Radhika. All of our Gaudiya bhajans, they're all glorifying Sri Radhika. They're all putting her most prominently, especially Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Gitamala, Gitabali. He's glorifying completely that focus of attention on service to Sri Radhika. So this is our inheritance, so to speak. This is our path, this service to this prem. Okay, so we come in our study here to page 345. So we're discussing the jivas within the that are manifesting. The jivas have manifested. First there is Swarup Shakti, then there's Chit Shakti, and then from the Chit Shakti, the Jiva Shakti is manifesting. And the jivas are always pure because they're actually manifesting from originally the Chit Shakti. This is where the jivas have their origin, in absolute that eternal realm of the Chit Jagat. That is our origin, that is our nature. And then we're, by Baladev Prabhu, we're thrust into this material conception through the agency of the Jiva Shakti. This is just talking about the jivas in this world. It's not talking about the other two eternally, the Nitya Siddha jivas. They'll be discussed later in the 16th chapter. But in this chapter, it's just principally the jivas in this world. So I'll read the last paragraph on page 344 first, and then we'll go into Rajnath's question. So this is what we read yesterday. The sages give a partial example from our experience of inert matter. Suppose you cut a small piece of gold from a large piece and use it to make a bangle. From the perspective of the gold, the bangle is not different from the original piece of gold. They are non-different. However, from the perspective of the bangle, the two are different from each other. The example is not completely correct representation of Chit Tattva. You see the example? You understand? The gold in the gold bangle is the same as the gold, the original gold piece. It's not different, but they have difference as well. What he's emphasizing is ultimately this Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. We're going to come to that very specifically in the 18th, 17th, and 18th chapters. But this is a prelude to that, because we have to appreciate this in connection with the Chit Jagat. We're trying to understand our origin from Krishna, and we are non-different from Krishna, but completely different at the same time in quantity. This is basically what it's saying. The example is not a completely correct representation of Chit Tattva, but it illustrates an important aspect from the point of view of Chit Tattva. There is no difference between Ishvara and the Jiva, whereas from the perspective of state and quality, these two are eternally different. Quantity, sorry. Yes, quantity. Whereas from the perspective of state and quantity, these two are eternally different. Ishvara is complete Chit, whereas the Jiva is atomic Chit. Ishvara is great, whereas the Jiva is insignificant. That's why our fortune lies in serving that great Ishvara. When we render service to that great Ishvara, we also take on the qualities of that Ishvara to have the ability to please that Ishvara. Just like the cowherd boys, they would wrestle with Krishna. They would defeat Krishna sometime. They would be more strong than Krishna. Sometimes they could run faster than Krishna. Sridham could sometimes run faster than Krishna. So they had these qualities for their Leela, which Krishna would allow them to actually defeat him. Ultimately, Krishna is defeated by love. It's the affection, that's the ingredient that the eternal Nityasiddha Parikas, they have that ingredient to defeat Krishna by love. And Krishna's happy to be defeated by love. That is the objective. Oh, I didn't turn the Wi-Fi on, but I think it's all right. Um, Ishvara. Oh, I'll just read that part again because it was very beautiful. This example is not completely correct representation of Chit Tattva, but it illustrates an important aspect from the point of view of Chit Tattva. There is no difference between Ishvara and the Jiva, whereas from the perspective of state and quantity, these two are eternally different. Ishvara is complete Chit, whereas the Jiva is atomic Chit. Ishvara is great, whereas the Jiva is insignificant. Some people give the example of Gata Akash and Maha Akash, the sky in a pot and the unlimited sky. So we see the sky reflected in the pot. So this is something like the Jiva. It's as if we are reflected through there. These are intricate points of tattva, but they really help us create a solid foundation in our faith towards Krishna. We can never be that supreme enjoyer. It's not possible, tattvically. So when we give up that attempt to be the enjoyer of matter, then we can come very closely to serving Krishna in a deeply satisfying way. So this is clearing our ignorance. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is clearing our ignorance here. Some people give the example of Gata Akash and Maha Akash, the sky in a pot and the unlimited sky, in this regard. But this example is completely inconsistent with regard to Chit Tattva. So he's rejecting that example of the reflected sky in the pot and the sky itself. He's saying this is not the same like that. We'll come to it. Brajanath, if transcendental entities and material objects belong to completely different categories, how can material objects be used as appropriate examples for undertaking transcendental entities? Well, we've kind of gone through this 3 times already. He's asked the same question prior. He wants to know why Babaji is using these material objects to describe transcendental topics and how they fall short of giving the real picture. But as was said previously, there is no other method to actually do that. If we're in the conditioned state, we've got to hear conditioned language. We've got to hear the conditioned ideas, etc. So we have no choice for that. Actually, transcendental language is realized appreciations of these truths. When we're realized in these truths, then we don't need the language, so to speak. We just have the realization of that. So this realization is to appreciate Krishna as the supreme.
Well, it's like like we have the different stages of progressive bhakti
Mm,
a sadhaka goes through. So you were telling about this language, this
mm,
materiality,
mm.
and so as a sadhaka process through shraddha. So to what stage that now you just spoke about the spiritual language that he can recognize.
When he comes to Bhav,
Bhav.
that stage of Bhav, even in the stage of Asakti, this is very close to that. This is just the stage prior to Bhav. But still, even in the stage of Bhav, we know from the pastime of Jad Bharat that we can actually fall down from there. So ultimately, it's not until the total consummation of praying that he's completely liberated from any attraction ever to the bodily platform. The story of Jad Bharat is in the 5th canto for this reason. Jad Bharat was performing his bhajan. He was having his hair was standing on end. He was His voice was choking up, etc., as he was praying to Lord Narayan in the sun. This was his Ishtadev. But he was definitely experiencing stages of bhav. And then we know the story, he became attracted to a baby deer. So because of that, anartha was still there. There was something that wasn't quite cleared. So we should realize and appreciate the depth that we have to go through to actually reach that full immersion into Krishna's seva. It requires absolute dedication of consciousness. And that begins with our activities during the day, etc. Are all of our activities in the day steering towards appreciation and realization of these truths, or are they distracted from there? We should consider these things. It's very hard just to remain immersed. Like today, for example, I had to take a taxi from Puri to Bhubaneswar, and then it's a whole thing. And then in the airport, dealing with all the different people and so on. Then on the plane, then another taxi up, and just the whole material. But all the time, I'm chanting and trying to bring the focus of the consciousness to the transcendental platform and to stay focused with attention. So I'm just giving the example of in our daily lives, sometimes we're distracted. But if we have this practice, it's our sadhana that is going to bring it through. The practice, the sadhana must be increasing as we're progressing. You know, 16 rounds is something, but that's just like treading water. 32 rounds is like we're starting to actually feel like a worthy devotee. If we're chanting 32 rounds, we're making some yagya, some sacrifice of our time to um, chant the holy name more. Then if we're chanting 48, then we're becoming quite sober in our application. And then if we go to 64, we're completely, fully immersed in Krishna. And there's no room for much else to come in, because the consciousness just gets immersed. It gets um, really held tightly by this holy name. And then constantly, not just the chanting, but actually always having to improve my chanting, not chanting in a distracted way also, because that can come in, always trying to appreciate the power and the potency of the chanting. It's described in so many scriptures, the Namna Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, Punashudo Nityanatam, Vinatvan Nami Naminaha. It's saying how this holy name is just so powerful. Let me just see the translation of that. But you already know so many um, aspects about the holy name. But we need to be reminding ourselves of this, because Mahaprabhu, he's given us this weapon of the name. Let me just read this translation. Because there is no difference between the name and the nami. So this is what we're discussing also. We're discussing there's actually essentially no difference between Ishvara and the Jiva except in quantity. We have the same Satchidananda. So Nam and Nami is the same. Krishna, Krishna's holy name, and Krishna himself. When are we going to appreciate that when we're chanting, we're vibrating the sound vibration of Krishna? So it should be attentive. We gave the example a couple of days ago, like with Lokanath Goswami, when he told Narottam to be chanting his name, and yet he gave that up to go and get water for that thirsty man on a hot day, which seems to be a natural thing for a good person to do, just like it seems to be a natural thing for a soft-hearted person to save the deer from drowning. But at the same time, is that act more important than us connecting with Krishna? So we should be have our um, awareness open to all these very subtle distractions that can float into our lives, and how they can, we might be separating from our wife, and then we might be feeling, oh, but she's so helpless all alone, or like so many things may come into our mind, and then we might give up that opportunity to actually do concentrated focused bhajan. So this type of thing, it'll come in the most, to each individual will have his own tests, so to speak, on this journey, how to come to Krishna. So it's saying the person, uh, because there is no difference between Nam, Sri Krishna's holy names, and Nami, Sri Krishna, the person who possesses the names. The holy name is a transcendental, wish-fulfilling gem, Chintamani, and the very embodiment of the transcendental mellows of divine consciousness, Chaitanya Ras Swarup. Thus, it is completely pure and eternally liberated. What an amazing opportunity we have every single day just to connect with the holy name. It's amazing, but we have to drop our desire to engage in this material world with the hope of getting some benefit from this material world. What benefit can this material world give to the jiva? The jiva can't, the soul can't enjoy anything in dull matter. The soul can only enjoy spiritual topics. So if we want to connect with our very essence, our soul, then we should just endeavor on this path of sadhana. It's this sadhana, somebody was asking me today, they don't really understand so many of the different topics, but the different topics, if we're chanting, if we're having sufficient um, focus in our chanting, then that will give us the strength, this Bal Shakti, because it's described we're missing the Bal Shakti. This is why we just can't come straight to Krishna. It's this Bal Shakti. Get your book.
Well, like when we are chanting like for 4 or 5 hours, such a huge. So when there's a hayway of focus,
And there's one
there is a hayway of focus. Like the focus keeps
flickering.
flickering. So
Because we're Tatashta by nature.
No,
It's
but
going to be that.
yeah.
Yes.
But any practical tips like you would suggest us that if you do this, you can just.
If you do it regularly for many, many years, it's not going to happen overnight. But if you take the determined vow, yes, for the rest of this life, this holy name is going to be my lifeline. And for the rest of my life from now on, I will always try and put this holy name on the front burner of my activities and practice. If we take that vow and we endeavor to do that, then surely this mercy is going to come to understand the complete um, relationship we have with Krishna. It'll wake up. But when the mind is flickering and oscillating, still we just keep on chanting. And eventually that will settle in time. That is sadhana. That is the nature. The weight of the sadhana is going to shut the mind up. The mind is like the material chattering, but the weight of the practice will gradually um, replace the mind's desires. These are so subtle and so deep topics. We do have to appreciate, what is this journey that we've embarked on to actually reach the soul's connection with Krishna. How to do that? It's just, we know how to do it, but we're weak. This is Kali Yuga. There's so many pollutants in the air. There's polluted food. There's so many distractions everywhere. So Krishna knows this, and he gives us this That's why the holy name actually is quite simple to do. It's not a difficult thing just to chant Hare Krishna. But we have to take it seriously. Otherwise, we won't understand these truths. We'll just be confused. Because what happens when we do chant Hare Krishna is that just like reading these topics, the consciousness rises. And when the consciousness is rising, then we have the capacity to understand these topics and to build this platform of tattva very strongly, so that Bal Shakti will actually come in the heart. This Bal Shakti is what we're crying for. Okay, Babaji. Oh, I didn't finish that. Oh, this question. I'll read this question again. Brajanath, I hope I'm not too spaced out today. I did have quite a lot of travel, and it's Ekadashi also. So I'm trying to stay on top of this. So forgive me if I slip sometime or something like that. So Brajanath, if transcendental entities and material objects belong to completely different categories, how can material objects be used as appropriate examples for understanding transcendental entities? Yes, we've asked this question 3 times. Why is he asking this question? Because he has some material doubts. We'll see the answer. Babaji, there are different categories of material objects, and the pundits of the Nyaya school consider them eternal. Because he knows Brajanath is a Nyaya scholar. So they consider aspects that are eternal, which are actually not eternal. They have to have this full education and know what is that Chidvastu. They have to know that. Otherwise, they will become confused. However, there is no such categorical difference between the Chit, transcendental, and Jud, material. How do you reconcile that sentence? Huh?
What does that mean?
Yes, I read it again. However, there is no categorical difference between the Chit, transcendental, and Jud, material. When you're making these examples, like we just had the example of the gold bangle, and then the origin of the gold. So there's a distinction, but at the same time, it's not a distinction. So this is a material analogy, but yet it's also relevant to the Chit. So it's saying here, however, there is no such categorical difference between the Chit, transcendental, and Jud, material.
What does he mean by category? It means we cannot categorize a judge.
Means strongly. Means not in category like that. No. When I say it's categorically not that way, it means it's definitely not that way. It's an emphatic word. But this will be explained many times in Jaiva-Dharma. I found that I've reached a place, what does that mean? And then I just read a few more lines and it gets opened up and cleared. Let's see. I have already said that Chit is the only reality and Jud is simply its transformation. That's the answer. The Jud, the material, is simply the transformation of the Chit. So in that sense, it's the same. It's the same origin, but it's transformed. There's Vikar. Vikar means transformation. The Vikar is different from the original source. The transformation of the gold bangle is different from the original block of gold. There's a transformation there. There's a difference there. But it is still, the Vikar is different from the original source, but it is still similar to the pure original object in many respects. For example, ice is a transformation of water, and it becomes different from water through this transformation. But the two remain similar in many of their qualities, such as coldness. So this is like the example he gives in the very first chapter of Nishag, yes. Hot and cold water do not both have the quality of coldness, but their quality of fluidity is the same. So we're looking for these similarities. Therefore, the transformed object certainly retains some similarity to the pure. We're trying to understand the distinction between Jiva Tattva and Chit Shakti. This is what we're trying to appreciate. Krishna is the supreme Chit Sun, Chit Jagat, and we are the Jivas emanating from that Chit Jagat. So we're trying to understand this phenomena. How can I begin to get a perspective on that? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going into it in great detail because it's so important to realize my relationship. This is Sambandha Gyan. It's so important to realize my relationship with Krishna as Anuchit, and Krishna is Punachit. Always, always, always. Because we forget in a minute. But if I build this consciousness constantly, then it becomes fixed that always Krishna is that superior energy, and always I am that inferior to Krishna's energy. But I am of the same energy at the same time. This is what we're trying to appreciate. It's very subtle. I don't think you can appreciate this without chanting. That's why I spoke about the chanting before. You cannot understand this. He even says himself, you can't understand it. Therefore, the transformed object certainly retains some similarity to the pure object. According to this principle, the transcendental Chit world can be understood to some extent with the help of material examples. Again, by adopting the logic of Arundhati Darshan, one can use material examples to understand something about the spiritual nature. Arundhati Darshan is aiming for a star. The Arundhati star is a small star. So you aim for a big star close by that small star, and then you will come to it. So this is what he's trying to reveal to us. Actually, this subject matter will wake the consciousness up. We'll start thinking more deeply about these. It'll force us to think, to try to appreciate it, to try to get some intelligent um, uh, um, satisfaction from it. You know, we're applying our intelligence. That has to be there initially, but then after a certain time, we're applying our mood towards this tattva, this topic that we're entering into. You understand?
Why is
Because it's Bhav Bhakti.
why has Arundhati Darshan been specified?
Because you're aiming for the Arundhati. We can read the
It says that you
read the footnote. Find the footnote.
Arundhati is a very small star,
Yes.
which is situated close to the Vashishta star in the Saptarishi constellation, the Great Bear. In order to view it, its location is first determined by looking at a bigger star
Yes.
beside it.
Yes.
Then, if one looks carefully, one can see Arundhati close by.
Yes, that's what I said. I explained the same thing. So we're trying to understand these material comparisons, and it's getting close to understanding the full topic. We're trying to understand the bangle and the original goal. We're trying to understand the Chit Shakti being present in the Jiva Shakti. And we're trying to understand the similarities and the distinct differences. That's what we're trying to understand.
Is it because Arundhati, because the bigger star is visible in a bare eye?
No, it's very simple. Don't complicate it. I'm trying to understand Jiva Shakti in comparison to Chit Shakti. And the example's been given of a bangle and the original gold. That's like the Arundhati example. It's like you're aiming at something which is not that Vashishta star, you're aiming for that, but that's not where you're actually going, but you're getting an idea of it. So you're getting an idea of the bangle and the gold. So it's giving you, you're getting closer to it. Don't take the example literally. One can use material examples to understand something about the spiritual nature. That's what it means. This is a material example, but I can understand something from there about the spiritual nature. Krishna's pastimes are completely spiritual. There is not even the slightest scent of a material mood in them. The Braja Lila described in Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental, but when the descriptions are read in an assembly, the fruits of hearing them are different according to the respective qualifications of the various listeners. Of course they are. Not everyone is going to understand. There's a expression in English when you read a newspaper, some read it black and some read it white. Some can see the white spaces and some can see the black ink. So it's the same newspaper, but some are seeing one way and some are seeing the other way. So that's all our individual natures. The Brajalila described in Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental, but when the descriptions are read in an assembly, the fruits of hearing them are different according to the respective qualifications of various listeners. Appreciating the ornamental figures of speech from the mundane perspective, those who are absorbed in material sense gratification hear it as a story of an ordinary hero and heroine. It's quite simple, right? If you're not, if the faith hasn't deepened in the heart about how beautiful and how special are Radha and Krishna, and how much they are demonstrating this transcendental love into the world, which takes our breath away. We have no words to describe that extraordinary feeling when we appreciate that speciality. Just now we were in Puri, and to see the beauty of Gopinath each day. Gopinath is there with Lalita Devi and Sri Radhika, and the pastimes between Lalita Devi and Radhika and Gopinath take the breath away. They're just completely astonishing. So if you're remembering these pastimes when you're having darshan, and you can become familiar with Vrindavan Leela when you're taking darshan there, then so much affection is going to build in the heart towards these. But someone who is material, what are they seeing? Just a beautiful form, just a beautiful blackish mood. But this particular deity is so special in this age because it's the only deity that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested himself. Mahaprabhu manifested this deity from Chatak Parvat, along with Lalita and Vishaka and Sri Radha. And Mahaprabhu himself, when he left this world, he merged into that deity. But the Pujari down there was describing that Gadadhar merges into the Sri Radhika deity. When Gadadhar leaves, he goes into the deity of Sri Radha. And whenever you take prasadam there, it's Radharani's kitchen who's cooking. So it's a very much a transcendental experience. All these experiences are off the mundane platform. So when we're having these different transcendental experiences, it's helping us to see the absolute truth of spiritual reality, as opposed to the um, dull material energy. We need these. Um, those who are absorbed in material sense gratification hear it as a story of an ordinary hero and heroine. The Madhyam Adhikaris take shelter of Arundhati Darshan Nyaya and experience the transcendental pastimes, which are similar to mundane descriptions. I'm absorbed in the rasa of pure transcendental vilas. So we appreciate the Uttam, Madhyam, and Kanachara, these different um, categories of devotees. So my Gurudev always used to say, quickly come to the Madhyam platform. Quickly get off this um, Kanishta platform and come to. He was saying various truths like if you know the nature of Brajadam, if you know the nature of Madhurya Ras, that doesn't exist in Dwarka or Mathura, that in Vrindavan, Krishna doesn't know he's God. He knows and he doesn't know. But the Brijvasis certainly don't know. They never know. Even when Uddhav comes into Braj and he's speaking with Nanda Baba, and he's telling Nanda Baba that Krishna is not really your son, and Nanda Baba doesn't know what he's talking about. He can't shift from his understanding that Krishna is. That means Krishna's not God. He's my son. And sometimes he steals, sometimes he lies, sometimes he's really naughty. How can that be God? So the Brijvasis, that special, exceptional love that they have for Krishna is not outside of that mandal of Gokul. It's not outside of that. So if we understand this point for a start, then we come to the Madhyam platform very easily. We actually begin to sit on that Madhyam because we're looking at things from a very significant point of, and we understand in Dwarka, they only see Krishna as the Supreme Personality, as the Super Soul, Paramatma. This is how they all, Krishna's God. That's why they cannot understand Vrindavan. But if we understand these distinctions more each day, then we are getting confirmed on the Madhyam platform. This is how my Gurudev explained that. The absolute truth is aprakat tattva. So how can we educate the jivas about it without taking help of the principle that I have just described? Yes. Can the conditioned soul understand a subject that tenders the voice dumb and stops the working of the mind? Amazing. You know, if we really come to it, there's no more words in the mind. It's just utterly beautiful. And we don't have it. The intellect stops working in that state. But to come to that state, we need to tie up all the loose ends, so to speak. Understand? All the tattva has to be clear. I'll read that again. The absolute truth is aprakat tattva. So how can we educate the jivas about it without taking help of the principles that I have just described? Can the conditioned jiva understand a subject that renders the voice dumb and stops the working of the mind? There doesn't appear to be any method of explaining these subjects other than the principle of similarity and the logic of Arundhati Darshan. We're aiming for the highest goal, that Amala Prem Seva. So initially, we're going to start aiming for Nishta, and then Ruchi, and then Asakti, and then Bhav. So we're going in stages like this. My Gurudev described many times, we have the capacity to um, reach the stage of Bhav in this body. We cannot reach Prem. The body would not stand it, would not tolerate it. The body would explode. So we're aiming for Bhav Bhakti. This is our goal. Material objects can be either different or non-different from each other. So difference and non-difference are not visible in them at one and the same time. Understand that? A brick is not the same as, mud. There's a difference.
As well as the brick cannot never be mud.
As what?
As well as the brick can never be a mud.
Yes.
That's what.
Yeah. But this is not the case with Paramatattva. We have to accept that Krishna, you see, this is where it goes into the achintya. This is where the Bhaktivinoda Thakur was many times saying, without this achintya bhav, without this appreciation for the astonishing nature of Krishna, it's beyond our tiny capacity. I think I've said practically every night the same example of the frog, considering his well. But that's a good example in this. We can't understand it materially. We can only be submissive to the ultimate truth and appreciate it more. But if we take shelter of that sadhan, then we're going to get that creeper from the avaroha panta. Our path is the descending path. If we're trying to understand it with our own intelligence and logic and trying to grapple with all these conceptions with the mind, we're just going to get exhausted. That's not the purpose. We accept and understand what we can understand, and then the rest is like achintya. It's inconceivable. And we accept the inconceivability of it, not become frustrated with it, but accept it. Of course, Krishna is so much greater than me. How can I possibly understand how Krishna can manifest planets? Krishna can manifest so many. Krishna makes universes, destroys them, and makes them again in a moment. There's no understanding of that. But I can accept that because Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks many times in the Falshruti about faithfully hearing. This faith, this Shraddha, Shraddha Shabde Vishwasa Koi Sudrita Nishchoy. This faith must be very strong there. This is what this sadhana is going to cultivate because we're going to have a direct perception, a direct experience. Pratyak Shavagamam Dharmyam. What's that? Raja Vidya Raja Guyam Pavitramitamulam. Pratyak Shavagamam Dharmyam. Krishna is saying by direct experience you can experience this Raja Vidya Raja Guya, this highest knowledge. You can understand it by direct experience of it. And this is certainly what the Nam, the holy name gives. We were talking about this yesterday also, how the chanting, it gives you something real. And then your faith is going to go very deep. Then you're not going to be distracted. We have to accept that Krishna is simultaneously different and non-different from his Jiva Shakti. This is what this whole chapter is about, really. We've had 5-6 pages saying the same thing, same thing. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wants us to understand where Jiva Tattva came from. It came from the Chit Shakti. So this is manifesting from there, and it's like the original gold and the bracelet. Let me just read this paragraph again just to get it better. Material objects can be either different or non-different from each other. So difference and non-difference are not visible in them at one and the same time. Yeah, you can't have mud and a brick together. But this is not the case with Paramatattva. But with Paramatattva, Krishna can walk and he can be still at the same time. This is beyond our material intellect. What does the devotee do then? Does he just give up and say, well, I can't understand this? Or does he bend his knee and pray to that magnificent personality? And please give me your kripa. This humility must always be there in the devotee. Actually, it's built into this path. I'm realizing as I'm reading this that without this mood of humility, we're not going to be able to accept it or embrace this.
Can I make a form?
Why?
As you said, if we don't accept this, we can't accept prasad. Krishna is eating as well as sits there.
Very good. Yes. He takes it and yet he leaves it there. This is different and non-different. He's leaving it there, but it's become different. I only think of Jagannath Prasad when I think that. I have a fridge full of it, by the way, but for tomorrow, because it's Dwadasi tomorrow. We have to accept that Krishna is simultaneously different and non-different from his Jiva Shakti and from the Jivas in it. I'll read that again. It's very important. Actually, I was saying the other day, every single sentence has to be really examined in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings, because each sentence is so carefully scripted, it's so carefully written. There's so many truths just in each sentence. We have to accept that Krishna is simultaneously different and non-different from his Jiva Shakti and from the Jivas in it. The Beda Abeda Tattva, simultaneous difference and oneness, is said to be achintya, inconceivable, because it is beyond the limit of human intellect. So Babaji is trying to take a scholar like Brajana, who's an amazing scholar in Nyaya, one of the best in the whole of Navadvip. He's trying to take him to accept those truths beyond his intellect. And that's the same for us. We're programmed, we're schooled. And yes, we understand it like this, we understand like that. But actually, the truth is completely different from what we understood previously, because we were relating it previously to our material existence. Now we're trying to relate to it to our actual nature, and it's completely different. It's not the same. So this education is transforming the material consciousness to become transcendental, slowly. Rajanath, what is the difference between Ishvara and the Jiva? Okay, this is a good one. First, you should understand the non-difference between Ishvara and the Jiva. By the way, we've mentioned this before, and you should mark it somewhere that this is on page 346 because this is a very important paragraph. It's very helpful.
It's similar with 296 qualities of Bhagavan. So one more. This difference between Ishvara 346.
We're reading 346
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Here. Babaji, first you should understand the non-difference between Ishvara and the Jiva, and after that I will explain their eternal difference. Yeah. Why is the Jiva and Krishna the same? So first we're going to understand this point. Ishvara is the embodiment of knowledge, Gyan Swarup, the knower, Nata Swarup, one who considers or reflects Manta Swarup, and the enjoyer, Bhaktri Swarup. He is self-effulgent, Swaprakash, and he also illuminates others, Paraprakash. He has his own desires, Ichamayi, and he is the knower of all Ketragyan. The Jiva too is the form of knowledge, the knower, and the enjoyer. He too is self-effulgence, and he illuminates others, and he too has desires, and is the knower of his own field, Ketragyan. From this perspective, there is no difference between them. You understand? Very helpful to actually learn Gyan Swarup, Nata Swarup, Bhakti Swarup, Mantri Swarup, Swaprakash, this uh, Ketra Gyan. So if you meet someone and they say that they're God, you say, yes, you're God. You have the same, you can enjoy like God. You have the same, you're full of desires like God. The only distinction is that you're very, very small. And God is very, we get confused in our own minds. Say, for example, some great mercy comes to us and we actually start to connect with the transcendental reality. Are we going to remain in a humble condition about that? Or are we going to, this pratishta, is that going to come out? If someone starts to honor you and someone starts to, glorify you, are you going to take on that quality? Our quality is exclusively glorifying Krishna, always. And his beauty just increases and increases and increases and increases. Whatever little beauty or ability I have doesn't increase anything like to the same capacity that Krishna said. When we read, just for example, the Krishna book, when we read the 10th canto, when we read all these different pastimes about Krishna, they're endless. His pastimes with the gopis, etc., they're endless. The loving relationships between Krishna and this Gopi Geet, for example. We read the prayers in that Gopi Geet. At the moment, my Gurudev on this thread, Rasamrita, I think it's called, every day he's giving lectures on this Gopi Geet. I think he's up to the 6th or 7th verse now. But it's just astonishing how many meanings you can take, and astonishing to appreciate just how much the gopis care for Krishna, their love. We are in this Gopi Anugatya. We're following the moods of the gopis. We're becoming aware of their love for Krishna. And it's so astonishing and so sweet to appreciate that it leaves everything behind. Once we immerse ourselves, for example, in that Gopi Geet and Venu Geet and Yugal Geet and Pranaya Geet, all of these different Geets, the Geets are the separation moods of the gopis. They've come to this planet to demonstrate their love for Krishna. That's why they've come here. They're the highest exhibition of love known to man. They're not from here, but they've come with Krishna. They're his complete potencies. But why have they come? They've come to inspire us about the reality of that transcendental world. They sing this Yatte sujata charanam buruham staneshu Pita shanai dadimahi karkasheshu Tena tabimatatya tena kim swit kurpadi vibramati dir bhavaliusamna. That they are concerned and worried that when Krishna is walking with the cows, his tender, soft lotus feet are being pricked by the needle sharp stones that he's walking on and the various bushes and prickles there. So this is agitating the gopis' hearts when they're thinking like that. They're praying like that. But it's also mentioned by the Acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in principle, that when Krishna walks through Braj, Mother Bhumi, she puts her tongue out. So Krishna is just walking on the tongue, actually. It's very, very soft. But still the gopis' mood and sentiment is to want to only bring Krishna pleasure. And when they're thinking that something is disturbing Krishna's pleasure, they're becoming completely restless and agitated at heart. So this Gopi Gita is something very special, especially during this month of Purushottam Mas. It's a very special month. It's also Chaturmasya, so these two together, Chaturmasya and Purushottam Mas. So we should be in no doubt at all um, how we should be conducting our sadhan bhajan in these months, because we can get so much kripa from this time, this period in practice. So that was a beautiful paragraph, and I'm going to leave it there for today, and we can go back again tomorrow and look at that same paragraph, because I want to go over it again, because personally I found great um, oh no, Sunday, yes. So not tomorrow, but Monday. Sunday I have another class, but Monday through till Saturday, 6 days a week we'll do this. Okay. Jaiva-Dharma ki jai, Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai, Panchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu